Welcome back to Speaking with Confidence, the podcast that helps you build the soft skills that lead to real results. Communication, storytelling, public speaking, and showing up with confidence in every conversation that counts. I'm Tim Newman, a recovering college professor turned communication coach, and I'm thrilled to guide you on a journey to becoming a powerful communicator. Today, we're breaking down how to communicate with clarity, how to use AI without losing your soul, and why action beats talent every single time. Today's guest is Jim Edwards. With almost 3 decades of experience in online sales, Jim has made a name for himself as a trusted advisor to entrepreneurs, coaches, speakers, and professionals looking to take their message to the next level. Since 1997, Jim has been helping individuals create and publish their own books, craft engaging sales messages, and ultimately profit from their knowledge. He is a best-selling author of over 3 dozen books, but his passion is helping other people succeed. Jim, welcome to the show, bud.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tim. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you, and I highlight you're a best-selling author because that's one of the things that you ingrained in us as we went through these last 3 months to adapt the mindset of whatever it is that you want to become, and by reaffirming it over and over again, it allows us to again change that mindset and actually take action.
Absolutely, because mindset creates action, and action creates results. And if you want to get results fast, change your mindset first. And that's what most people don't do.
Well, I'm just going to give everyone fair warning. You should strap in and get something to take notes with, because we haven't known each other very long, but we're kindred spirits. And I told you this both publicly and privately. You've changed my life in a good way. I mean, obviously there's people that changed my life in a not so good way, but you changed my life in a good way. And I can't thank you enough for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And one of the things we're kindred spirits about is family is so important to the both of us. And you said something that really kind of stuck with me. You said, I was made to be a grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
How does that identity influence the way that you teach, coach, and create today as opposed to 20 years ago?
That's a great question. And I would say that the number one thing that it has done is taught me patience, because I was not a super patient person. And you can ask my daughters who I got married and instantly had a 13-year-old and a 7-year-old. And I was not a patient person. And I used to say patience is a virtue, and I'm not a virtuous person. And so being a grandpa, I instantly had to become something that I had not been before. And I'll tell you a quick story.
Right.
So I used to say stuff like, I'm not going to have any drop kick dogs. I told my wife when we got together, no drop kick dogs. Well, so far in my life, I've had a poodle, a Pomeranian, 6 Chihuahuas.
Oh my God.
All I have are little tiny dogs. And then I also said to her, I said, I'm going to go my whole life without ever changing a diaper. And she said, oh, okay. So my grandson, Johnny, who's now 19, he was born. Courtney was struggling with just, new mom. So Terry's like, hey, bring the baby over. We'll give him a bath. I'm like, just, yeah, I'll bathe the kid, do whatever, And Terry comes in. She says, hey, Courtney and I got to run to Walmart. I'm like, okay, you taking the kid with you? She's like, no, we're going to leave him here. We trust you. Keep an eye on him. So I'm sitting there in my recliner, right? I remember it like it was yesterday. And I got my knees up, and I got the kid leaning against my knees, and I'm looking at him and he's looking at me. And all of a sudden he makes that face that everyone knows who knows what that face means.
Exactly.
And I'm like, okay, I got a choice. I can let the kids sit here and wait till they get home, or I can handle this. And I looked in his eyes and he looked in my eyes, and I said, all right, little dude, I got you. So I changed and that was the first of many. I mean, that first one was like, oh my God, it's
Right.
like one of those movies where, you're doing this and all this.
Uh-huh.
And now it's like, like one of those ninja cooking shows and the kid's done and you're deep sixing the thing. But my point is, when my identity changed in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
my attitude changed, my actions changed, everything changed. I was a changed man. No pun intended. Changed.
Change man.
And so the fastest way to change is to adopt an identity, and not to do it in a fake way. Because you've heard,
Right.
fake it till you make it. All that
No.
does is make you a liar.
Right.
Okay. I know that sounds harsh, but you can't fake it till you make it. What you have to do is become the person, and then you have to stay the person long enough for the external world to catch up.
Right.
And the way you can make the external world catch up faster, both people's attitudes towards that, whether they believe you're what you really are, that identity, is by taking action that produces results that make people go, oh, wow, dude really is going to quit smoking, really is going to change diapers, really is going to lose weight, really is going to keep exercising, really is going to run a marathon, really is going to be an entrepreneur. Because you can talk about, a lot of people talk about, that's the faking it till you make it thing.
Right.
The serious people change their identity and start moving forward. I'm not sure. That was kind of a long answer to a short question. I hope that was helpful.
Well, but it's so important, and I think it adds a little bit of nuance there, because you talk about patience, and in today's society, everybody wants something now. I want to be successful now. I want, I want to make $1 million now. I want to sell 500 books now, or whatever it is. And the whole idea of patience is you have to do the work, and you have to let the seeds that you've planted actually grow to be able to get to that.
Yeah. And that's delayed gratification. And most people cannot in any way, shape, or form deal with delayed gratification. And so that's why it's hard for anybody to experience any meaningful change or results, because what you just said, they don't sow a seed and then tend the seed long enough for it to come to fruition so they can ultimately reap. They want to go to the freezer section in the grocery store.
Exactly. So why do you think people taking action? Why is it people that don't take action when they see that, okay, this is the process, this is what you have to do to be successful? Why is it that they don't take action?
So I think there's a bunch of reasons, and probably the biggest reason is fear that it won't work out, fear that it will work out. Okay. Fear of being judged, fear of making a mistake, fear of the unknown, fear of looking like an imposter, fear of really, really trying, and that being exposed as coming up lacking, fear of not being able to figure it out. But ultimately, the biggest reason why people don't take action is fear, or they're too comfortable. In other words, it doesn't hurt enough right now to change.
Right.
And so they're just too comfortable. And that's why I try to every day inject a little suffering into my life. No, for real. I consciously inject some suffering usually through working out, usually through getting up early. I mean, I get up at 4:45 in the morning, which to some people is like, you sleep in that late? And other people are like, holy crap, I'm going to bed about then. But here's the thing and I know this sounds weird. The universe looks at everybody and says, okay, you need to get your dose of suffering at some point. Okay.
Right. Yes.
And so the universe looks around and says, okay, we got to pass out some suffering today. We got to do some growth for some of these people. And they're looking. They're like, nah, that dude, he'll like it too much. We don't need to give him it because he's over there causing his own suffering. Okay. And that's how you kind of, it's kind of like when they put the blood above the doors when they were going to take out all the kids in Egypt. It's kind of like, hey, that dude, he's cool. He's doing his little suffering thing. He's doing worse to himself than we would do to him. We'd leave him alone.
Exactly. In your career, you've done a number of different things. I just highlighted some. I mean, you've been a copywriter. You've been in real estate. You've written, how many books have you written? Close to 40, right?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's funny. I did my first real big project I did with a guy named Joe Vitale back in 2001, so almost 25 years ago. And Joe said, one of his taglines was, "I'm the author of too many books to count. Too many books to men." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds so pretentious." And now it's like, yeah, I don't know, Tim. Honestly, if you go look on Amazon, there's a bunch of them. There's over 30.
Yeah, there's a bunch, and for what I do, most of the time when we talk about communication, we're talking about verbal communication. But why is it so important for here's a kind of a two-part question. Number one, why is it so important for people to read, and why is it so important for people to actually write, and in this instance, actually write a book?
So Samuel Clemens, also known as Mark Twain, had a famous saying. He said, I didn't have time to write you a short letter, so I wrote you a long one. And what he meant by that was real writing causes you to have to clarify and crystallize your thoughts and be able to really refine your messaging. Whereas just rambling and talking and stuff, you can be intellectually lazy. You'll figure it out at some point.
Right.
And also when we speak differently than we write.
Yes.
And writing tends to not have the fat on it that talking does. I think that's one of the reasons why, long form podcasts, if the people actually could get down to the point, you wouldn't need a 4-hour podcast. You could do it in about an hour.
Right.
So there's some entertainment value in there, is a different thing. But reading allows you to experience someone else's thoughts. And one of the things that I have learned is, if I have a penny and you have a penny and we trade pennies, we each still only have a penny. But if I have an idea, you have an idea, and we trade ideas, we actually end up with at least 3, if not 4 ideas, because we each have an idea now. Then I have an idea based on your idea, and we probably come together and come up with an idea that's a synthesis of the two. And so reading gives you an opportunity to experience somebody else's communication style. It exposes you to new words. It exposes you to new thoughts. And it also helps you to internalize those thoughts. And so writing forces you to crystallize your thinking. And typically people who are really good writers also can be good speakers, because writing trains you to organize in a sequential way your thoughts, as opposed to someone who's just a good conversationalist, but may not be a very good presenter.
Right. And it's kind of where we are in society today. The younger generations, number one, they don't like to read. They're not very good writers, and trying to get them to do both and to see that bigger picture of how ultimately that's going to benefit them as they move forward in life and in their careers, sometimes is difficult. And in the world that I came from in academia, as smart as all of us are, and how highly we think of ourselves in academia, we just throw our hands up while they just won't read, or they're just horrible writers, as opposed to saying, you know what, why aren't they reading, and what can we do to entice them to read or get them to read? Why aren't they good writers, and what can we do to encourage them to become writers? How can we do that from a societal standpoint when it's okay, they've got short attention spans, that's just the way it is, and move forward?
So I think there's several different things. Okay. One is we can lead by example. Okay. That's one way, but that assumes that they're paying attention. I'm going to butcher this, but Warren Buffett I'm paraphrasing terribly, but the thought that I pulled from this was that basically if you show me an incentive, I'll show you the action. In other words, whatever the payoff is, if it's big enough, that's how you'll see where people are acting. Follow the money, that kind of a thing. If there's a big enough incentive for them to write or communicate well, then they'll do it. I do think, though, and I'm going to take kind of a little bit of I'm going to feel like a politician here for just a second. But I will say that with AI, with all the things that are coming, and with now, the internet used to be called the information superhighway, all this good stuff. It was the source. You could go to Google and find out anything. You had the whole world at your hand. But to find it, typically a person had to be on the other end of that search, meaning I go look for, advanced chinchilla ranching techniques to increase yield and, and square inches of fur from each chinchilla. There's a dude somewhere who wrote an article or wrote a book about chinchilla ranching that mentioned, increased yield, little chinchilla Viagra or whatever you got to do to increase your output. Now with AI, there's no person on the other end of that. So in other words, we've created a self-licking ice cream cone of content creation. Yeah. And it's pretty good ice cream. It's not great. It's not handcrafted artisan ice cream based on a 300-year-old family recipe, but it's as good as Bluebell that comes out of the Food Lion freezer. Okay. And when you got a couple of beers in you and you want some ice cream, it's as good as any other ice cream. And that's the problem, because what's happening now is that there's no soul in the content anymore. There's no person on the other end of that content. It's just content. It's a commodity. It's not even a commodity. Right. It's like dirt. And so the problem is that when you have a situation where you have people that say, hey, look, I just want the information, then they're not going to learn how to read. I just need something that helps me come up with an outline or come up with this thing. Now, what we don't want to do is throw judgment on it, because as soon as we throw judgment on it, kids are like, yeah, screw you, old man. You don't know any better. Times are different. Exactly. And all this other stuff. It's like Democrats and Republicans, whatever one, if they want it, then I got to hate it.
Exactly.
If my parents are liberal, then I have to rebel by being conservative. I mean, that's how I went from being born to two hippies in Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco in the late 60s to being a gun-toting redneck in the swamps of Virginia. I mean, how did I go from San Francisco to living in this town? It's, rebellion. So I think we got to also not tell them that they're dumb, not tell them that they're stupid, not tell them that they have no attention span, but figure out a way to show them that if you want to have a meaningful life and to make meaningful connections, then you need to stop looking externally and start looking internally. For things that make you stand out and make you attractive. Because this is the part where I'm going to proselytize a little bit, and you're thinking, I thought he was already. If you don't do this, if you don't learn how to share your soul, you're going to get lost. Yes. This is where you're not going to be relevant. And the only reason anybody's going to pay attention to you is because of the stories you can tell about your direct experience in whatever you're doing, the observations and opinions that you have about what's going on that come from your experience, the unique perspective that you have for an issue or a problem or a solution or a process because of your experience, and the lessons that you have learned through experience in how to deal with something. That will make you a trusted advisor, a trusted expert, as opposed to someone who just goes to ChatGPT or whatever, Grok, Gemini, and asks for answers and can come up with a pretty good answer. So the key for all of us moving forward, don't look at AI to replace you, because if you do, it will.
It will, right.
Look at AI as a way to accelerate your ability to share your message and to amplify your message and to do the mundane intellectual labor that you used to have to struggle through to get to the point where you could really share value. But you better have some value to share and learn how to cultivate that within yourself, because that to me is the survival skill. And that's why we talk about books.
Yeah.
You know, with a book or something like that, my camera's going nuts because it's got AI in it. But like this right here, oh look, whose book is this?
Oh, look at that. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Connections account.
This book right here proves that you know what the heck you're talking about. This book gives you your framework to teach from. This book literally gives you a platform, an intellectual platform to teach from, to lead from, to mentor from, to justify your existence. This is like your lifeline. This is your life preserver in a sea of junk. Okay.
Exactly.
So I'm gonna put this back on the shelf of honor.
So I get questions all the time from students and people I'm coaching. What if I don't have any stories? And I kind of look at them and said, well, you have to have stories. I mean, because you're however old you are, you're human. You've experienced things throughout your life. Okay. I think the question is, how do you pull those stories out? How do you figure out what those stories are, and how do you tell those stories? I think that's really the question that you should be asking, not, I don't have any stories.
So there's two parts to that. There's how do you mine the stories and how do you tell the stories? Okay. So, and mine the stories, not in the popular vernacular possessive of mines is, but how do you mine as in hi ho? You know, how do you go back and mine those? Well, you got to think about different things. So I always think in terms of, hey, what are some things that happened in school all the way from kindergarten through whenever you decided you were done? Stories from work. Okay. All the different jobs. I quit or got fired from 7 different jobs my first 18 months out of college because I got a degree in history that qualified me to do one of 2 things: teach history or go into 100% commission sales. My question to you is, would you want me teaching your children? And the answer is no. So go learn how to sell. So school, work, relationships. Okay. Great stuff that happened, or actually, well, let's just go events. Okay. Great stuff, bad stuff, calamitous stuff. Interestingly enough, the worst stuff that ever happened to you in your life typically makes the best stories, as long as you're not in the middle of it. Nobody wants to hear about your current woes, but they love to hear about the bad stuff that happened and how you overcame it.
Right.
And so if you just look at schoolwork, relationship, events, and just sit quietly, things will start bubbling up. And there are questions you can ask. I mean, what's something really terrible that happened to you in high school? What was something amazing that happened in your high school? What's the greatest thing that ever happened? I mean, I can tell you the story of being in 7th grade and having somebody literally shove me in a locker because I was so little that I could actually fit in the locker, and they wanted to see if they could make me fit. But then the kid that did that to me, actually we became really good friends, and he used to drive me home from college. So, just those kinds of things. Okay.
Right.
Thinking about it's not everything was great. It was like, it really was great, or it really sucked. Okay.
Right.
So then how do you tell a story? There's really 2 main ways you can tell a story. One is by the hero's journey, which basically starts out with, one day something, I was just living my life. something bad happened. I made a bad decision. I did something stupid, or something calamitous happened. Then things went from bad to worse. And then I hit rock bottom. Okay. And then something happened. I made a decision. I met somebody. I put in a bunch of work, and I eventually was able to recover. And then this is the important part of the story. I transcended everything and became Superman.
Right.
And so that's a way, that's every story, really. But then the other way is what I call the 6 C's, where basically you talk about the context, you talk about the characters, you talk about the conflict, how it ultimately resolved, and then what's the lesson that you can take from it. So those are the 2 ways that you can tell a story. And the cool thing is that, here's the other thing. It's like telling a joke. I had a comedian tell me one time, I said, dude, how do you remember all these jokes? He says, I don't remember the joke. I remember the punchline, and I remember the setup. And if I remember the setup and the punchline and the basic flow, then I can tell that joke in 10 seconds, or I can spread it out for 5 minutes. And because you're telling your own stories, you don't have to make anything up.
Right.
All you're doing is you have to just kind of know how the story turned out, the basic flow of it, and then how you're going to make the story fit the point you're trying to make. What's the moral
Right.
you're trying to do? And then again, as a speaker, you can make that story be 30 seconds long, or you can make it be the through line for your entire hour talk.
Right.
So that's the beauty of stories, is that you can tell them over and over, and people don't get tired of them. Because it's funny, you'll have people, as you do this, you'll have people that'll show up to hear you tell the story, to see if you tell it the same way every time.
Same way. Right.
And you'll have people that know your story better than you do, and your story becomes their story, and they'll tell your story to other people. And that's awesome.
Right.
So just to kind of sum up real quick, mine your stories and keep them. I have a spreadsheet where I keep stories. I when I think of a story, when something happens, and I'll record it there, so I know I can grab it later.
Yeah, I do something very similar. So I've got a spreadsheet, but one of the other things I do is I'll sit down like here at my desk, and I'll video it, and then I'll put that video in a folder, right? And then I'll be able to come back and say, okay, how do I want to tell it, and practice it from there, so I can record it, watch it, put it away, and then if I know I'm going to be speaking on something, okay, let's pull this story out, and how can I change it? How can I work on some of the other things in speaking, the body language, the facial expressions, the tone, and those types of things, after I've already had some examples of me doing that, and that helps with the telling and impact of that story as well.
And that's why you're a pro. That's why you're Michael Jordan and I'm Allen Iverson, because you're like practice, 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 and I'm like practice.
We're talking about practice.
Talking about practice.
Practice.
Hey, I'm old enough to remember actually when, and you are too. I remember when AI was Allen Iverson.
Yes, exactly. See, if he had to trademark that, he would be.
Yeah.
He is already okay. I mean, he's going to be all right, but I mean, he'd really be okay. But let's talk about AI. Before we get to AI for a second, everybody also has to remember the best way to tell stories is to start telling stories, taking action. It goes back to the very first thing. You can't continue to say, I'm not good at telling stories, I don't have stories, and then not tell them. I mean, you have to actually start telling stories. And then just like anything else, you'll get better at it if you go back and practice and look at it.
Yes.
That's I don't think we should gloss over that, because again, the only way things happen is if somebody does something. You can think about all you want. It's not going to just happen.
So the first time I learned really the power of stories and selling, I had known guys, I'd been in the insurance business, and I worked with, funny enough, had a mentor who both of his sons went to VMI. And one of the kids didn't commission out of VMI, but worked at the insurance company where I was working, my first job out of William and Mary. And I remember he had this big ring and he was always cleaning the ring. That was always his thing. His nervous habit was to clean the ring. The gentleman's name was Mr. Gitchell. Mr. Gitchell had been a state trooper and had done a bunch of stuff. And he took me out, trained me. We'd meet with clients and stuff. And one of the things I noticed about him is he never talked about insurance. He never talked about insurance. He talked to the people about themselves, their background, and all that stuff. And he always found a story that he could tell that made them like him. And then in 2 minutes, he had the life insurance form filled out and had them sign it, and we left with a check. He never sold them insurance. He sold them himself through a story that created a connection. And the guy was a master at this. And so I will never forget. And so the first story that when it really finally hit me, of telling stories in a way that made sales. I mean, I'd gotten better at telling stories and using stories to make connections, but I had my 40-page website trying to sell my book. I was doing okay. Went to a conference where I was actually a speaker, but I was speaking on search engine optimization. And there was a guy there teaching how to do one-page sales letters. And he was obviously selling something, but he did go through his format for basically these would be the building blocks you would do to do a sales letter. It was something similar to this. He didn't hold up his Duplo blocks. And I said, okay, I can do that because I understand stuff. But one of the things he said was, you got to tell him a story. You start with a story. And I was like, that's a part he did. He wanted to sell you, so he didn't really teach that. I didn't have money to buy his course. So I said, okay, what story could I tell that anybody who wanted to buy my book would actually give a rat's patoot about? I was selling a book on how to sell your house yourself, and a little voice said, hey, just tell them the story about how you sold 2 houses by yourself in 30 days at the same time, so that you could, and you had just gotten married and you wanted to move to Florida. So I told that story. My sales went up literally 250% overnight.
It's amazing.
By taking my 40-page sales letter, making it a 1-page, it wasn't even a sales letter, it was a 40-page website. I made a 1-page long form sales letter, took a bunch of my free stuff, turned it into an offer, and told my story. And sales went up 250% overnight. And that story on that sales letter with that offer stack made it so I could move out of a trailer where I was living because I had made some really bad business decisions. And that book was making enough money to pay for a house payment, mortgage payment, 2 car payments, and an electric bill. And that created financial freedom for me, that story. And that's pretty cool, right?
That's really cool.
So stories create connection. Story creates emotion. And this is the thing you need to understand. You've heard this, okay? Stories create emotion, and people buy on emotion.
Emotion, yes.
But if you can't make someone emotional, they're not going to buy. And the way you make them emotional is to tell them your story or to tell them their story in a way that makes them want to change their story by buying your stuff.
And I think both of those ways are equally as effective, and you just have to kind of figure that out as you're doing it to see which one is actually going to fit whichever audience that you're talking about. Right.
You can do both at the same time. Let me tell you my quick story, Tim. Let me tell you my story. And maybe my story sounds a lot like your story. Maybe you're sitting there right now thinking this and this and this and feeling this and this and this. And if that's the case, let's get that fixed.
How about that? How about that? And people are already sitting on the edge of the seat. And by the way, I love your Duplo blocks, and I've seen the training that you've used those in on your website. And the first time I saw that you brought them out, I was like, wow, he really has Duplo blocks.
100%,
awesome.
especially modified with whiteboard tape.
That's great. So let's get into what you're doing now, and what. There's all kinds of AI out there. 5-6 years ago, nobody really knew what AI was or what it was doing and where it was going. I still don't think we have a good handle of it. But what's the difference between the large language models such as ChatGPT, Grok, and Gemini, and these other things, and copy and content.ai?
Okay, so here's the thing. This is what most people don't understand. There are these things called large language models, which are basically, that's where the AI is. Okay, the large language model is the AI. So ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini are all just interfaces with AI. Okay, and the reason why a chat bot is the way the chat interface is the way that people communicate with AI is because that's the easiest way that the average person can do it. They can't program it, so they have to be able to kind of talk to it. And so all that is it's an interface with AI. That's it. It's not the actual AI. It's how you try and coax the AI to give you what you want. So copy and content is an interface with the exact same models that you're using for ChatGPT. We actually have our own LLM that we trained on all of my past writing, a bunch of copywriting stuff that's just existed for years, all the stuff that people are going after. So the large language model is the AI. These are interfaces with it. So what I did in 2006, I started creating software to help people write sales copy. In fact, I will show you. And it was template based, and I had a bunch of dynamic templates and other stuff. But this was my first copywriting product. Okay, that's me way back in the day.
How about that?
And basically, it helped you to write a sales letter. And it was formula based, template based. And over the years, I got it better and better and better. I had people thinking people thought we had AI before there was even AI, just because of what we were able to do with my system. So 4 or 5 years ago, I started seeing AI coming. And AI was here long before ChatGPT. You just had to have an interface with it. Long story short, I figured out to have my software platform I'd been developing since 2006 start interfacing with large language models. And so our stuff is purpose built to help you accomplish specific things. So now you think of ChatGPT and you've heard of GPTs, which are these things that hook in and they help you do specialized stuff. I was doing that long before you had GPTs to help you do specific things like write articles, write ads, write emails, write blog posts, write entire sales letters, write PowerPoint presentations and have them spit out in the actual PowerPoint slide deck. So we're just a specialized interface that is combined with our process and our training and coaching and community. So I tell everybody, it's like, look, we're the whole package. When was the last time you saw your boy Sam Altman make a video showing you how to use ChatGPT to get a specific result in your business? Never.
Never.
Where's the community around ChatGPT to help you to write a book or create sales copy? It doesn't exist. Okay. Your boy Elon Musk is not going to answer your question about how to use Grok to be able to repurpose a blog post.
Mm-hmm.
So the difference is copy and content is purpose built to interface with multiple large language models, but it's only a part of the overall solution because we teach you the process. We've got the training, we've got the community, and not to be braggadocious, but you also have my 30 plus years of experience baked into the entire thing.
Right.
The author of 30 plus books. I was a syndicated newspaper columnist for 10 years. I've spoken on stages all over the world. I've generated tens of millions of dollars in sales from a single website. All of these things are baked into this, as opposed to just a large language model. And I'll sum it all up real quick. All this stuff, this is data. What is data? It's an acronym for default answers to anything. Okay. This is where you go get the vending machine answer to your question.
Right.
If you want to inject soul into everything you're doing, then that's what copying content helps you to do.
And it's that soul that makes it yours.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's for the for the listeners to understand. To everything that Jim said is 100% accurate. You could go to ChatGPT or Grok or whatever and type something in and put it on a piece of paper or put it on a website, and you can claim that it's yours, and it's not. When you work with Jim and copying content and his team, everything that you put out, if you follow their directions, if you listen to their coaching, it's actually yours. It's actually your thoughts. It's your ideas. It gets this and it accelerates that process and gives you something that's actually yours that you can then go take and be proud of it.
100%. And that's why you see people out there using ChatGPT and other stuff like that who are like, hey, can this fool a GPT detector? They're the ones who take their stuff and put it into a GPT detector and see if it can be detected as having been done by AI. Whereas the stuff that we help you make, nobody worries about it. Okay, because it's your stuff. This is my stuff. Now, whether it's AI, well, this was AI assisted or something, I don't care. Think what you want. I know this is my stuff.
Right.
Okay, this is my stuff. I caused this to be created. The one thing I will tell you is that we talk about an identity shift, a mindset shift. One of the things that we all have to do in this brave new world is that there are two identities that you can have. You can have the identity of a creator, or you can have the identity of a curator. A creator is too slow now. You can't survive. I'm just saying, I don't believe you can survive without using AI tools to help you. But the creator's just too slow. You're going to get eaten alive if you're doing everything by hand. It's kind of like if I got to cut firewood, does it make me a better human being if I'm using a small hatchet and a handsaw, or should I use a chainsaw and a hydraulic log splitter? I'm still splitting the wood, okay, but I can get inside quicker. This is too slow. It's not saying it's bad, but it's just too slow. But if you think about being a curator is the person who is an expert. I mean, think about a curator in a museum. They got to know what the heck's going on. They got to have judgment and discernment about what's going into the museum, about what is important, what's real, what's fake, what's legit, what's important, what people need to know about, what needs to be featured in the main hall as opposed off into these dusty wings. The curator is more of an expert than the creator. And so your job is to curate the very best for your audience and to curate the best information out of yourself and get it in front of people. So this is a big deal.
And also with it, I just want to take that one step further. Being a curator also broadens your knowledge quicker as well.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
it focuses you on service for others rather than being all in your own stuff.
Exactly. Now my guess is, if I think I know what the answer is, but I'm asking the same way. You know, if someone's listening right now, watching, wants to build confidence as a speaker, you know, what's the very first action you tell them to take today?
So if you want to build confidence as a speaker, there's two things you need to do: prepare and practice. And so if the more you practice, the better you'll get, but the more prepared you feel, the better you'll get as well.
Right.
And so you also need to find the style of presentation that makes you feel the most confident. Some people, it's talking from notes. Other people, it's memorizing the talk. For others, it's having a PowerPoint presentation. For me, it's having this pickle in my hand and being able, I mean, you set me loose with a topic, a couple questions, and a board, man, I can talk all day.
Exactly.
Maybe I'll say something good somewhere in there.
Well, you do all the time, and just, you know, for the people that are, you know, listening and not watching, go to the YouTube. As I was getting ready to say, go to the YouTube channel.
Go to the YouTube on the line.
It's on the line. It's up on the wall. Go to my YouTube channel, and you'll be able to see what Jim's talking about. I mean, this whole episode, he's been writing notes and teaching as he's gone along. And, you know, Jim, that's one of the things, you know, that I mentioned to you the other day. You've been a teacher your entire life, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah.
And it's the way that you go about it that may be a little bit different than the typical Air Fingers quote teacher. But I think it's people like you that have as much or more impact on helping people and helping them reach their potential than people could ever imagine. Because you care about people, and that's your everything that you've done in your life has been to help others.
100%. I mean, yes. And my question's always been, how can I help other people to be enriched and to enrich myself in the process? That has always been my thing. If I can help you make $1 million, can you, you know, are you gonna, then you should feel good about paying me to teach you how to do that.
Exactly. And it's funny you just said that in this last class talk, and I asked a question in our Facebook group, and I knew what your answer was going to be, and you nailed it right on. Is, you know, are you confident that the value that I'm going to give you, that you're going to make this money back tenfold? I know that. Stop telling me that. I already know it. But that's the whole point, right? That's the whole point.
And then my question to you is, because I remember that you're like, are we going to get a discount? I said, yeah, the discount's baked into it already.
Exactly.
But my question to you is, looking back now and everything that's happened as a result of that, do you feel like you made a wise investment that's going to pay you well into the future? And did it end up being a complete and total bargain?
Oh, easy. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And so let me just kind of tell a quick story. So I was in my office late last night. I left here after midnight, and I was working on something, you know, for the book, and had an opportunity that I wanted to write another press release. And in my background, I've written press releases a lot, right? But again, I know things have changed, and I've got to change with it. And I was struggling with writing it using the system. And I said, well, wait a second, I got to go back to my notes, because we talked about exactly the step-by-step process. Now, it doesn't matter if it's this book or another book, or even something, if I were to do something else, I've got this body of knowledge with those notes that I can go back and then follow it step by step by step, and every time I do it, I get better results. That's the key. So is a bargain? Heck yeah, it's a bargain. I mean, it's a bargain now, and it's going to be an even bigger bargain 6 weeks from now, a year from now, and on and on and on. And that bargain is just going to compound just like anything else.
100%. And you as a speaker, as a seller, as a coach, as a trainer, as a teacher, you have to feel that value inside yourself for the value that you're giving to other people, the use value, right, versus the cash value you're asking for. And you need to feel it to the point that you're willing to hold the line and be willing to let people walk away if they don't recognize the value. But what that also says to you is, most people, I guess I'll discount my price. No, what you need to do is get better at explaining the perceived value. Okay.
Right.
And that's, so I always have looked at that, and there's a little flip in there. And that's, if you struggle with charging what you're worth, it's because one of a couple of things are going on. One, you don't recognize the value that you bring, and you're not explaining the value in a way that raises the perception of the worth to the person that you're going after. So those are just a couple things to work on.
So where can people connect with you?
So easiest way is just go to jimedwards.com. And that's kind of like Planet Jim. That's the easiest way to kind of find my blog and my stuff and my latest this and that and all the goodies and stuff. So jimedwards.com. And
I'll put all your links in the show notes for everybody. But Jim, again, number one, thank you so much for all that you've done, for me. I appreciate you. I appreciate our friendship, and thank you so much for spending some time with our audience today. I can't tell you how much value you've brought, and how you're going to change other people's lives as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, and I'd love to come back if you ever want to talk about more stuff.
Oh, Jim, we could talk for hours.
Awesome.
I'm not sure we would solve a whole lot of problems, but we could talk about it. That's for sure.
There you go. Appreciate it.
All right, bud. Take care. Be sure to visit speakingwithconfidencepodcast.com to get your free ebook, Top 21 Challenges for Public Speakers and How to Overcome Them. You can also register for the Forming for Public Speaking course. Always remember, your voice has the power to change the world. We'll talk to you next time. Take care.